go to 10 at the latest.
Okay.
All right, so we are live on Radio Caña Negra, everybody.
Where's your ear horn?
Wait, hold on, it's right.
And look at how great I look. Everybody.
Okay. Yes, give it to him, body rolls. What? Flips. Well, you gotta give it to him real tight too, like all the way, like shoulder dislocating.
You see how I made that look cleaner now?
Yes. Wait, look at waves. You don't know about this right here.
Why do I hear a child coming up here?
Because you got children and they have access to the house. Like, duh.
Lock the door.
Why
lock us out? Like
that I don't do. You know?
Lock us out.
Yeah.
I remember my parents used to do that, and I used to hate it.
I don't lock doors either. I sleep with the door open.
But they would lock it for like 2 hours because that was their time. And we respected it. We were like, all right, you got that. We'll be fine for 2 hours.
You know what? Occasionally in the winter, I close the door, and that's I don't even have locks. I don't think any of the doors lock, except for the like front door. Like,
you know, I asked that question on Twitter the other day about people sleeping with their doors open, and I slept at Evelyn's house before, and I was like, she could leave her door open when she sleeps. And the thing is, people are like, well, we grew up in a Black household and we weren't allowed to close the doors. And the thing is, we weren't either. Unless we were sleeping. We always close the door when we were sleeping. And my grandmother has this thing, you must close the door when you're sleeping. And Yuko does that too. Like, I'll go to the bathroom and he's like, cierra la puerta. And he's like, still in his sleep. Like, we always close the door when we're sleeping. Always.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, a lot of people do. And I mean, I don't have a problem with, like, for example, Sonari closing his door. He closes his door all the time. He's a teenager. Like, you just gonna close the door.
I wasn't allowed to at that age.
I rarely close the door. Like, I closed the door when Javier came over the other day because I wanted to tell her something. But in general, besides that, also I may close it like in the winter because I use a space heater, so I want to concentrate the heat. But aside from that, the door is staying open. Because if somebody come, I want to be able to have access. I'm like, you ain't gonna, like, you know how some people will be like, oh, if somebody comes, they're gonna get you because the door is open. For me, I'm like, I need to hear it so that I have time to prepare.
You're talking about somebody breaks in or somebody visiting?
Yeah, somebody breaking in or something.
But that's not even, because people brought that up and I'm like, I'm not even thinking of that. I don't know. I just don't feel at ease. You know, like the spirit, like the door is really going to stop a spirit. But like, you know, I just want just the symbolic nature of just closing the door.
Now, I went to an Airbnb and the doors didn't have a lock. Like the bedroom door.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't sleep all night.
Really? Do you lock your door when you sleep?
No, but I'm in an Airbnb.
Oh.
I'm in an Airbnb. I don't know the people that are staying there. And it was a nice house. Like, it was a nice house. But I didn't have locks. And then I complained the next day. And the woman, like a Polish woman, she said, no, we don't lock the doors. And I was like, so I was there like 3 nights and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't get a good sleep. I asked for some money back and she gave me some money back. Because I think that's a basic expectation. And an Airbnb that you should be able to lock your fucking door. Like, I don't know you. I don't know you at all. I don't know people want to harm Black people. And look at this.
Well, it is lusciousness.
Look at all this.
I'm like,
exactly. That's exactly what I was worried about.
Yeah.
I want to play my new favorite song. Can y'all hear this?
Donald Trump. Fuck Donald Trump. Yeah, nigga, fuck Donald Trump. Yeah.
We can say that all we want. And the reality is we're still this you know, this man might actually win.
Yeah.
If he wins Nevada. I'm following it right now. And the fact that he was elected 4 years ago, and the fact that is so close, we have to just come to terms that we live in a white supremacist country, society, world. And that's just something that we have to grapple with. And like COVID, we have to learn to live with COVID. We have to learn to live with white supremacy.
And that's the biggest sickness. I was on Twitter and I see all of these new green people talking about Latinos voted for Trump, and we're just over here yawning. And I'm like, okay, like I mentioned earlier, there's 20 countries in Latin America, number one. If the U.S.
not counting the Caribbean,
right?
Over 20.
Yeah, there's over 20.
And if people don't get on people got on one accord. White U.S. people got on one accord to vote Trump. So white Latin Americans are voting like their cousins. And so this is always so bizarre and absolutely ridiculous to me, especially when you have these people and it's like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? This type of
see what I see.
Do you see what I see?
And the biggest thing, they're like these Latinos think they're white. I'm like, they don't think. What the
They
fuck?
are
Right.
Can y'all stop this stupid? Like honestly, stupidity. I don't care. I don't care how it sounds no more. Obviously, this willful obtuseness, willful stupidity. I don't get it. I don't understand what you're seeing right now.
Myself.
The biggest thing, well, I like the braids.
I know, right?
It's cute. But they're like, how do they oppose one dictator, Castro, and support another? I'm like, these were white slave-owning people. What do you mean? Trump is their people. What are you talking about? And so it speaks to the very little that U.S. people know about the region and the lies that are being continuously spread for them to be shocked at what's happening.
I don't even know I think that there's just it's ridiculous on every level, but I do think that there's also a space of like people feeling like there's real grief here, right? Like I feel like for people who don't feel like they have another place to go, and even if you do, I think that people want to love where they live. I just think that that's it's not unreasonable to have that expectation, and how that shows up is sometimes like giving people that sometimes don't deserve it. Like I think that you keep looking at it as an opportunity for people to show up and kind of do what's right. And I think that in 2016 there was foolishness, and there was just like, okay, you can't do this again. And then all of a sudden for the people who actually go and do it, like that just feels more like just double harm, because you know what's possible, and then you don't think that other people are going to create this type of, are willingly going into this type of environment, which I think is really I do feel like there are lots of feelings around the way that people are showing up that include like guilt, that include being blindly loyal, right? In some ways, like there's just no level of, and then also recognizing the way that it shows up. I think that there are still people who don't have access to, who haven't learned the skills having to do with critical thinking. And as a result, like, no, seriously, like I don't see it as like everybody is a critical thinker or thinks what I think or has the capacity to like go on Twitter, right? And I mean, and I'm not just talking about like people that don't have access, but I'm talking about people that are also like, think about the fact of, look at when COVID happened, how many educators were like, I don't know how to use Zoom. Now I have to learn how to do something different. So people don't even want to learn shit for their job. You think they're going to learn shit that they don't really have to even like for the purposes of saying that, oh, I care for kids, and you still going to spend a whole entire summer beefing about the fact that you got to go on Zoom and not getting good at Zoom? These are the same people that are expected to take those skills that they didn't utilize and think deeply about a presidential election. Like there's just it's not happening. And when you think about all the other elections that people don't show up for, right? Like, or that people like in the most marginalized communities, you have long-term incumbents that haven't done shit for the community, and people just vote for them out of habit. So I also think that part of the challenge is that people, the conversations about vote were incomplete. For me, I just felt like telling people to vote is not enough. Because if you're dealing with people that don't have the capacity to fucking take 3 options and read them all, or the interest, maybe not even the capacity, but the interest, right? Or they're not valuing it, then you can't trust that they're also going to be like, when you tell them to vote, that they're automatically going to vote for the candidate that you think is optimal.
You bring up a really good point. This is what I was talking about with my husband. He said that people literally take what comes out on TV and they believe it.
Absolutely.
Period. At face value. He said, and he's in Cuba, and he said that he got a couple US channels, and the people on the channels were saying that at no time in history has the economy been better than under Trump. And I'm like, And so he was like, but people saw that, they heard that, and they took it at face value, period. It came out on the TV, so it must be true. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to follow that.
Absolutely. The media, you know, and people don't really question who owns the media. It's like the media just poof, you know, like arises on its own, and reporters do their own thing, and people get hired for these positions on their own merit, right? And not because also of their views. Yeah, the media is a beast, especially Latino media. Especially Latino media that until recently had mostly Venezuelans and Argentinians and Colombians as their main broadcasters, right? So especially Latino media. And I know as a fact, my mother-in-law, she only listens to Spanish news, which is Telemundo. And Telemundo is horrible. So I'm grateful that Omar and I can like kind of digest the news with her for her, because otherwise she would be really thinking that Breonna Taylor is a criminal. Because that's what, and I was like hesitant around like criminal. No, not criminal, but associated with a criminal, quote unquote, right? And that deserved. You know, like it was warranted what happened to her, that it wasn't really a mistake, right? That's the little type of reporting that happens, and then that's enough, right? So the entire, you know, the whole conversation around Dominicans and repatriation of Haitians, when that was covered on the media, it was framed around, you know, the population of Haiti is taking over. Mm-hmm. Haitians are taking over this country, like they're literally going into White Houses and kicking out the president. Like they're staging a coup.
Yeah,
and that that had to be controlled. Right? It was literally framed as that, and nobody's digesting this with our elders, with parents, with cousins, with aunties.
And now we have less opportunity to get together because of COVID. So maybe the conversations that would have happened at a barbecue with your Theo's house, now people are having to really navigate some of those things independently and by them, you know, like in alone.
Yeah.
And that's a scary piece. Like I will say that, I mean, I'm not even gonna lie. I get caught up by the media sometimes where it's like, ooh, right? And I feel like I kind of know better. In fact, I sent y'all my joke that when I went to I showed up at the polls and they were all like, where are you going? What? And I was like, excuse me, I know what I'm doing. Like, District 20, please. I go right to the table.
Why you change your voice? Why you change your voice?
No, but look at the fancy.
Right, look at my period pool. Wait, hold on. Where was I? I'm gonna try.
No, that voice that you just used just now, I never heard that come out of your body.
It's like
the whole time that I ever knew you.
I was like, excuse me, I know where I'm going. Excuse me, thank you. Right? And then I get the fucking envelope and the thing, and I'm like, who the fuck is Joseph Biden? Like, it was just like, there was a moment where it did, and I'm thinking to myself, like, if it wasn't for Kamala's name, I was like, And I was thinking to myself, like, I can't be the only fool that this happened to, right? Where I was just like, oh, snap. Like, I could very clearly see Donald Trump. And it was just little things that, you know what, that can like throw people off in a moment.
It gets you nervous.
It gets me so nervous because I was like, wait a minute, I'm literate and fluent in English.
Yeah.
I know what I'm reading. And I'm still out here talking about who
no, when I have voted in Panama, you know, it's a little scratch thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, remember those tests that you used to do?
Yeah.
Okay. And I would be like, and then I'm looking at it like, will it be, is it clear that I marked that? I don't want to erase it now. And I'm like, and then I put it in the thing and I'm like, is it in?
And it's your name.
Right.
Like that you're shaking, it's your name. You can't.
And I'm like, why am I so nervous? And I'm coming out of there sweaty of a cardboard box.
It's the right. You get scared about the simplest things. And so I was listening, I was like, why am I like this?
I want to point out Wallace us talking about the WhatsApp groups. That's a thing with Latin Americans and really a lot of people, a lot of different people.
The little memes are problematic.
The WhatsApp messages, the spreading of mis and disinformation. I had to check my mom with that 5G crap. I'm like, you look crazy. I blocked her. I blocked her for a little. I'm like, don't do this. And I actually had to have a talk with her. I'm like, first of all, you look crazy. Second of all, this isn't true. And third of all, stop. You know? And like Evelyn said, you know, these are, you know, I'm really glad you brought up that nuance that these are people who are analytical, right? My mom was the first person I got my consciousness from, right? And she's sending me 5G. I'm like, look, lady.
Yeah, no. You can get sucked in. I mean, I get sucked in every time I go to the supermarket. If I see I'll be like, oh, I saw this commercial. Let me go on and get it.
Like your camera, your phone holder. You're like, yeah.
It's shit I don't even eat that I will be like, oh, I saw the commercial. And I'm not even recognizing it until I'm at the damn cashier. And then I'm just like, I don't even want to have to give you the trouble to put this back, bro. Just go ahead and put it back.
Let me tell you something. Because you can think, I feel like somehow they have implanted a chip in my head. Because me and the three of us will talk about something. And then suddenly I'm seeing it on my feed.
Yeah. Because the cookies, right? Like whatever the hell they call it, like they listening all the time. Look at your phone right now. I bet you cookies are on your damn phone right now. You got to add.
And not those chocolate chip infused kind of cookies.
Right. Because shout out to those. Let me tell you something. In this whole climate, gummies might be the real MVP.
Wait, and you were so like, no, I don't, like in the beginning, January, remember we were like, Evelyn, you want some?
Yeah. And I was like,
Evelyn, my house, Evelyn is like, no, I don't smoke. I don't eat that. Just put me a drop.
Yep. Now I'm like this.
No, you're the gummy pusher. You're the gummy pusher.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah, I don't do that.
In the world for this shit right here.
Meanwhile, Dash and I were like,
running, right? Like,
Miss Goody Two Shoes. I have a workshop to go and do now.
You know what? Do you remember I was fucked up at that workshop? Like I was like, who am I? Like I didn't even remember that I had a workshop, and then I was like, I gotta go. I was in the cab like this. But now
workshop you talking about?
I had to work that day that I left y'all. I was like, oh my God, I have to work. And it's right now.
Remember that she left it. I thought it was something that I had said.
No.
Yeah,
I was like, wait.
She picked up like this. I gotta go.
You went to the people that workshop with the gummy and the
CBD and the rice and the Korean pork? Yes. Yes, I did. Yes. And now, you know what? I be taking them like how I got these little old ladies. The strawberry joints.
The best candies on the planet, okay?
In the chat, if y'all are out here eating your abuela candies, and you know what? You ain't living right. Because I don't know where's Angelique. She ain't living right because you know what? She don't put these in a little Ziploc. If they not in a Ziploc in your bag, you're not an auntie.
Not at all. Somebody, some Satan spawn on Twitter they put a picture of the strawberry candy and said these are nastiest candies on the planet. They got flamed. They got ratioed within 2.5 nanoseconds, as they should have. We were like, excuse me? These candies are elite. What are you talking about? You don't have any ancestral knowledge. Your mom don't love you. Excuse me?
Listen, as they should. Flaming is only right. But we have a couple of comments.
We got some comments in the chat.
We have a lot of comments.
Yeah, shout out.
We have sorry, but we got Javier in the waiting room.
No, he doesn't. He's not here. He's not here.
Why you not correcting these people?
Why you?
Javier was like, that ain't your friend? Ain't nobody coming to see you, Dash.
Who got company? Who got company? Who got company in my house when I already put my bata on? Who got company? Aquí no hay visita. Aquí no hay visita.
That used to be my grandmother. No, my grand aunt, the twin.
Mm-hmm.
When my friends would come over, there's Javier. When my friends would come over, she would be like, "Oye, ¿y esta gente a qué hora se va?"
Yep.
But she would say that in front of everybody.
Nadie
tiene casa.
That's me right now at this age.
Listen,
y'all don't have for my birthday party. I said y'all don't have a house. My birthday party, I kick people out.
But remember, how many of you had somebody like a parent that would pick up the extension and then be like, "Ya se acabó la llamada." Hello?
Welcome, Javier. Welcome. Did he freeze? Did he melt?
He frozen now. I was like,
damn.
That's a reenactment of me at 16 getting embarrassed at my mom on the phone. So this will be me. I'm Javier. And my mother's like, ya es tiempo de quitarte del teléfono. Tienes que colgar. No te da vergüenza. Tienes que ir a la escuela. And you're like,
I know. My dad would be like, oye, Javier, pero ¿hasta cuándo? On the phone. ¿Hasta cuándo?
Yes.
They would be like, no, but catches. ¿Con quién tú estás hablando? Dash. ¿Y tu mamá te deja estar en el teléfono tanto tiempo?
Yes.
Damn. Oh, okay, he had to reload. Oh, you had to re-upload.
Reload.
What up, Javier?
Hi, Javier.
Hello. Y'all
Happy Wednesday.
It's Wednesday?
Wow. Is it? I don't know, child. It's April-tober up in this piece. I don't even know what the hell. I don't even know what month it is anymore.
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm just here.
Wait, now you kicked off Evelyn.
I didn't touch it.
Javier's like, I didn't touch that woman. Javier is like, I did not touch that woman.
So we have a couple comments just to run through real fast, and then we'll hop to Javier, our resident Texan. Texas with the Mexicans. I don't know. Anyway, so
bars.
Marieli, shout out Marieli. And Marieli, I worry if the door is closed, it traps me in. Because we were talking about sleeping with the door open or closed. And
do you put your door open or closed?
Right now, I sleep with my door closed.
How come?
I mean, for a host of reasons. Well, I don't live by myself anymore. But even when I live by myself, I got accustomed to closing the door.
I close the door.
Why? I don't know why.
Were you allowed to close?
I don't like being surprised, and I don't know what happened to surprise me. I want to be.
Were you allowed to close the door when you were a teenager?
Early teens, not really, because my parents were like, when you
your parents are black, yes.
When you pay, close the doors. When you start paying bills,
my dad used to be like, "What are you doing in there that you shouldn't be doing?"
I don't care about no closed door. I'm coming in. You can close it. I'm not knocking though. Like you thinking that closed door is gonna stop me?
Once I lost my door.
Me too.
Me too.
Y'all lost doors?
Yes.
My mother took it off.
No.
The two little screws, they're long screws, Evelyn. You get
it. And the worst busted it, and that's how I lost it.
The worst part was that they would hide the screws. So we could easily put the door back, but they would hide.
Right. You'd be like this with the door, like
exactly
right against the frame.
No, and you know what happened? I was in so much trouble one day, and I was gonna get a spanking, right? So my dad came in to the room. I was probably like 12, gave me my spanking, and then he closed the door, and I did this. And he opened the door back up, and I was like, and he was like, what did you just do?
Oh no!
That was a setup. He knew.
And this was after I had gotten, you know.
You're rebellious since you're born. That's like the meme with the mom who had the camera and her son was in the back like this, and he noticed that she saw the camera, and the video end, and people are like, "Damn, I hope little homie is alive."
Yeekus.
Right.
That is a Yeekus moment. Oh no.
So we have Javier. Javier got other things to do.
Oh, he does?
Right, yeah.
What does he have to do?
I gotta go to work.
Yeah.
What kind of work are you doing at 9:00 at night in the streets?
Oh, the streets though, damn.
Sorry. What kind of work are you doing at 9:00? No, because a lot of that work you can do now online.
And I got a presentation tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
We were like, all right, acceptable excuse. We'll let you go for schoolwork.
Thank you.
So Lizzie, speaking of that, last night and today has been so overwhelming. I mean, I knew this, but it's so frustrating how little folks in the U.S. know how racial hierarchies work in Latin America and the Caribbean. And so Javier and I were chatting earlier today, and Javier is a Texan, Austin. And you said that your state turned blue.
No, not the entire state. That would almost never happen.
Right.
We haven't seen that since the Democratic and Republican Party changed based off of this idea of race. We had some areas that went blue that weren't necessarily expected to go blue. And that's mostly, I mean, Austin, we knew Austin would go blue. We knew, Houston, we knew would go blue. Dallas, we knew would go blue. But the Valley, I think, was a bit surprising. And the Valley is the part of Texas that's on the border, between the United States and Texas. That's what we refer to as the Valley. That entire whole Rio Grande Valley, where they produce all the grapefruits. Heavily populated by Mexicans and Mexican Americans. And for the most part, that entire area went blue except one part where Laredo's in. Laredo's one of the largest cities on the border. But, I don't know what the next question is. I can probably address that.
Wait, but what does that mean?
I mean...
We're speaking openly here, bro.
No, I mean, the Valley, I've never been to the Valley, physically been in the Valley. The Valley for me and for many people from here is like such a distant place. For us, for me and people like me, it might as well be Mexico. Because that's just a whole nother beast. And then like being here in Austin and being at the University of Texas at Austin, we get a lot of young people from the Valley coming to Austin, and like this is their first time in what they consider Texas, because for them the Valley is the Valley, and oftentimes I find some different attitudes from people that come from the Valley versus Mexican Americans who have historically been around, particularly African American or Black people en masse. You know what I mean? Like here in Austin, you can't separate us, like, because we've always had to be in this space together. Houston's the same. San Antonio's a little bit the same. Dallas is the same. But down there, like, the vast majority of the population is Mexican or white, and then there is a negligible Black population in that part. I think in relation to this election here that came up, in relation to like this idea of Latino voters, however that brings anybody together, I think it. Now I understand that Biden didn't get the majority of the votes like Hillary got in 2016, but he still got enough of the Hispanic vote to win the majority of the counties in the Valley. I think because, you know, immigration, as many people that research like issues in like communities and voting, immigration has been like the key issue, one of the key issues for the Latin community or the Hispanic community in Texas. And I think, like, you know, when we think about anti-immigrant rhetoric, which is like usually synonymous with brown people, or his immigrant is synonymous with brown people, and we know that's problematic. You know, in this context, in the Southwest, in Texas particularly, where Mexicans and Mexican Americans or Chicanos are the vast majority of the demographic of people that are regionally thinking about Latin America. And I think like the way that the rhetoric around immigration has been framed has been largely targeted at Mexican people. And I think along that border, you know, it hits them a little bit differently because, you know, you can't really tell who's who. I mean, yes, you can. Let me not make it seem like that, because they got their own racial hierarchy down there in the Valley. And those Mexican or Chicano.
What do you can't tell who's who? You can't tell who's who in what sense? What do you mean?
Well, you know.
Oh, you're talking about the difference between a Chicano person, Chicanx person, Mexican and Mexican American person?
Yeah. I mean, you can, like, in that group, they really know. I mean, I know as an outsider growing up here, but they really know who's in there. And, you know, it's interesting because we're on the border with Mexico. So, and it's not like Florida, Cuba. It's not like New York, Puerto Rico, you know, where you have to like get on a boat or get on a plane to go between these places. We literally can just go across like in a car. So you oftentimes see Mexican license plates here in Texas, particularly like going to the shopping malls. And those are going to be Mexican people who are like 98% European of descendancy. They're white. And the border is never, I think for them, largely the border isn't always considered to be a barrier because, you know, socially, economically, and racially, they've been able to traverse that barrier on a daily basis, some of them. So it's not a barrier. And that's tied to race. But then, you know, if I ask you to draw a picture of a person, when I say illegal, largely people have this idea of what an illegal person or undocumented person looks like in the United States. And that's usually a quote unquote brown person, if you will, with indigenous features, dark skin, you know, like the typical person that you see, like we would imagine working in braceros, like those, and they experience the border quite differently. Even if they are United States citizens, even if they're Chicanos historically have been here, for them, they're always the target because they're assumed to be undocumented. And when in fact, there could be plenty of other people that don't have the stable migratory status but don't get that because they don't fit the description of what has been constructed as an undocumented person in the U.S. So I think that really impacts that community a lot down there because, you know, the anti-immigrant rhetoric has been very, in its language has been very Mexican-centered and a very, like, a racialized Mexican person who has more indigenous features or could have more African ancestry, but not white Mexicans. No. And then I think it's also important to note as well in the community, that community as well, you know, we talked about in my class, you know, they have a lot of what they call closet Republican voters, closet Trump supporters who are Mexican, who can't be vocal about their support, but they go to the polls and vote because a lot of them, are business owners in the border region that own businesses that depend on the same type of labor that white Americans depend on. That's often undocumented. Their clientele base are Mexican people that are racialized as brown, that have more indigenous features, and they make them money. So sometimes they can't be vocal in their racism, but they can go to the poll and be vocal in that space. So I think that's really interesting to think about. And then just relating it to like African Americans here in Texas, again, is when we talk about, I think, the immigrant narrative in Texas, again, because it's often synonymous with like Hispanic or Latino, it's often pitted against another group, and the other group to pit itself against or to build itself off of is it is Black, and particularly African Americans in the state of Texas. Right? That we just
I think you bring up a good point, not to interrupt, about those closet Trump voters. I was speaking to Yuko earlier today, and he said that for some, and he speaks in a Cuban context because, he has friends in the US, he talks to them all the time. And so for him, what he was saying was that you have a Cuban who has immigrated from Cuba to the US, right? So now they're set up. They have their job, they have their car, they have their house, they have the pool in the back of the house, all of this, all of that, right? They're able to send money to their family. And so he said that if they're getting to do all this great stuff under this Trump administration, why would they vote him out? And so I offered that, within his friend group, a lot of them do work undocumented. They work under the table. And I'm like, whoever's in office, y'all are still going to be doing, outside the legal framework, for example. And he's like, no one's thinking about that, Dash. He's like, if you're good, if you're set up, you don't have it, you don't know anyone that died of corona, you're able to produce money, you're able to send money back. Why on earth would I vote out the person who I'm doing good under? And so it's not even this big analysis even. It's that I am able to achieve this life that he said in his context, anything is better than here. In his context, Cuba, anything is better than here. In Cuba, he's eating rice and arroz con huevo, right? And so now you have crossed the border and you can eat steak every day if you feel like it. Why would I then do any type of extensive research if I'm set up? I'm a vote the same person in. Change for what? Change for what?
No, most definitely. I think, that is like a real issue. And we had a long discussion in my course today with the undergraduate students. It's like 500 of them, and a lot of them are Mexican American particularly. And this idea does come up, how deep do people, particularly, again, whoever we talk about, how deep do they actually go into investigating who it is they're voting for beyond resolving the situation of right now? And I understand the situation of right now and your current state of the economy is probably what motivates you, the decision that you make, because it's the right now, and many people have to live in the right now. And I think sometimes it lends itself to people not investigating at the level, or knowing at the level that they should, kind of what are the, I can't say unintended consequences, because they're not hitting. Like, we know what they are. But I think, you have to got to take into consideration, like, where do these people get their information from? Like, what has Spanish language media been saying? And we already know how Telemundo, Univision, how they're gonna roll. So those are the two main sources of where people can get their information. It's already going to be skewed. And if there's no reputable sources in Spanish that people can access that can give them a holistic, realistic source of information, they're going to be swayed in a particular way. And you see that disconnect with the immigrant vote in the United States, with the younger college age, or like the 18 to 25, and their parents, you know, you see them going like this. You see this going like this because sometimes, you know, the parents, the kids and the parents don't see the same issue. And I think sometimes it can be related to what information the young people have access to versus what information the parents have access to. And it can move them to go different ways, you know. And I think that's important too.
I also want to offer that, like, there are some people who, like, you know, I think that sometimes what comes up is that people say, like, oh, they didn't know. There are people that, you know, based especially on the work, they knew they in choice to align with a racist. And because we, right, like, that's just there's also that, right, which I feel like as you know, especially for like the younger generation that likely is more likely to participate and experience diverse spaces than their parents, then they may have a different thing. Also, younger people tend to be, in some instances, like full of performance, right? Because they might say, or they have the language sometimes, like we talk about, they have sometimes the language. And so really recognizing that nobody wants to be on the wrong side. Like, people want to be on the cool kid side, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that when it comes down to it, your actions are also not going to be aligned with the person that you said was so bad, because that's also what you know, right? And so, like, when my question is always, when in crisis, what do you default to? And that's
conflict,
right?
Like we say in our workshop, what do you lead with in times of conflict? And I want to point out, and just a side note, there's tons of nuances and layers in this voting. So we may not get to every single thing, but Marieli and Maricruz, the Maris, brought up evangelicism, or the evangelics, which, hey, Anayansi, which is, yes, absolutely. And we talk about this over on Radio Caña Negra on our social medias about the far right. They make it these cutesy names, the far right, how the evangelicals have taken over Brazil, the white pathologists in Brazil, the Trump's cousins in the South, BFFs.
And they're organized. That's another thing too that we forget, you know, to really, like, we don't acknowledge the way that churches have money. Because even if you're into, like, they got coined, even if you're into the poorest person, right, that has been raised under, I know, for example, from like being Catholic, everybody gives, right? Tithe, like whatever denomination you're from, but like tithing, that element of like informing and using that as a resource. And so I feel like there's also that space where we don't often think about that because of the presumed separation, right? We're like, oh, we can't really, but that's a very big group that has influence and they got resources. So
yeah, absolutely. Bolsonaro's campaign was funded millions because of that network of the evangelicals. And we have seen that in Bolivia, we see it in Brazil, we see it in the US, we see it throughout Latin America, and how they can push their agendas because they're well funded. And so,
no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying in Brazil that they actually preach in the jails. They appeal to people who live in poverty. Hey, come this way, and you'll get all of these gifts, and your life will improve. And you have the high occurrences of the terrorism against African descended spiritualities. You have thugs for Jesus, essentially.
And yes, the evangelicals are beastie, and they're the only ones providing social services up in a lot of these spaces. You know, the social movements, the left social movements, they don't want to deal with incarcerated people in the region. That's why we don't even know the numbers of Black people that are incarcerated to be accurate, because people are not doing that work. They don't want to deal with teen pregnant moms. They don't want to deal with, the evangelicals are doing that. And I don't like it. And they're giving space to people. So it's like one of those big contradictions, and they're heavily funded and financed. So they can definitely shift. Not only an individual and a family, they are shifting whole cultures.
Yeah.
Fully. No, it's some, in Colombia, there is, on the coast, there is a whole community that was built by evangelicals, right? And it's like almost like 400 feet above the water. So this community is not in a threat to be eradicated by climate justice that other communities are facing. So we went to that community. These people are, they have community center, they have school, and it's all done by the evangelical church. And how can you fight with that when they're providing free housing for people?
I had asked Yuko, my husband, he's a Babalao, and I asked if he ever went to a Christian church in Cuba, and he was like, "Sí, para comida." He went there for food. They didn't turn him or convert him, but he was like, "Yeah, I was up in there for the food," and I left, and then I went to do Ebo, yeah, it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Also, somebody mentioned in the chat, Juan, an extremely well organized on WhatsApp and equivalent channels. I can only say WhatsApp like that. I can't say I'm like, "Tú tienes WhatsApp?" WhatsApp. So if it ain't WhatsApp, it's not. So recognizing that, and you know what, and Wallace had mentioned that earlier. So thinking about how people, they moving beyond your tia sending you a pray this morning
with the teddy bear and the rose, the glitter rose.
Yeah, all right, they done stepped up the organizing game on WhatsApp.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say too, I think, with the evangelicals, as it relates to like Latin Americans or the Latin American region, in understanding that Roman Catholicism is not the only Judeo religion in Latin America, but the evangelicals are there. But I think like in its translation, maybe to like the United States and voting practices, I think the Republican Party evangelicals can speak to a lot of Roman Catholicism beliefs and tenets, i.e. like this idea of abortion. That is a strong issue that's going on. I think with countries like Panama that has official religion, which is Roman Catholicism, and the cardinal has a legitimate say in the politics of the country, not the ultimate, but a legitimate say. I think it can influence the way people think about political affiliation in the United States, because if you're a diehard Catholic or a diehard evangelical or a Christian in general, you might not necessarily have to go into the complexities of the difference between the evangelical church and the Roman Catholic Church, because at least it is still based in Christianity, and maybe you think that the Democratic Party is not. So we can put our differences to the side for a second to come to this one party to make sure that we still are able to adhere to our values as Catholics or Christian people or evangelicals. So I think because it used to be a big divide between Christians, Protestants, and Catholics. And, that was a large way to segregate or to differentiate between Anglos and Latins. Was this idea of Protestantism and Catholicism, but you don't hear that. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about them worshiping all these different Jesus, Hail Mary, Santa Maria, Jose Listo. No, they don't talk about that no more, because it's like, okay, we can not talk about that because we can talk about abortion. We agree on that. So let's rally around that. I think that's important.
That's true. I mean, y'all have the chat lit tonight. I will say that. Y'all are like out here, bop, bop, bop. And Mariana
I'm just saying that, Javier, if you have to hop off, go ahead, but we're gonna jump into some of the comments.
Oh, thank you, Javier. He should get like, I heard the click like on the radio, like next case.
I like that. Okay, well, no. Okay.
But
it's a new microphone.
Yeah, it's a new mic.
He's like, everybody's gonna hear everything sound I make.
But Mariana adds in the chat that also adding LGBTQ plus issues as well, right? So they align along those issues as well, and thinking about who's gonna be most in, right? Right. Lizzie adds in Bolivia. Agnes Camacho particularly has done speeches with the Virgin Mary. Overall, it's the white elite and mestizos who are demanding a military intervention again to, in air quotes, protect democracy. Then folks have the nerve to tell me Christianity doesn't have a power in the region. Says who? Right? We have my poor Puerto Ricans have been so systematically kept down that it's like someone in an abusive relationship. They accept the shitty way they are treated and get happy when a bone is thrown their way. And this is Adriana, maybe? Vanessa Colon. I apologize if I butchered your name, but yeah, you all, A, you all have the chat lit, and B, it's yes and yes and yes and yes and yes and all the way. Thank you so much, Javier, for your expertise. In case you got to go and do your homework, we always love and appreciate you and look forward to your session on November 21st around Deporte Negro. Shameless
plug it, Javier.
Right?
Yeah, y'all come through. I mean, this moment is the best time to get yourself ready for that class. You know what I mean? Because like what we're talking about right now, we got to situate the Black athlete in these moments of resistance. You know what I mean? I'll just say 1968, John Carlos, Tommy Harris, Mexico City Olympics, the Black Power Olympics, the most iconic Olympics that probably we know the man. These two individuals, along with the white Australian, go up there and do the Black Power fist. And we largely only think it's for African Americans. But John Carlos is of Cuban heritage. So it was something about John Carlos, regardless of his national origin or his parents' national origin, that put him in solidarity with this Black movement for the uplift and the disruption of the system. So I want us to make sure it come through so we can get to these historical figures and contemporary figures that are very vocal in sport. And I want us to challenge some of our ideas about sport, because it ain't just your old PE class with a professor rolled out the balls and sat in the rolling chair and spent around and told you to run around the track in 5 minutes. She laughing because she was upset, cursing him out. But we gonna get to
around though?
Under the breath, cursing the PE teacher out under their breath. He said. So we're gonna get into it very deep. Y'all don't want to miss this one. I promise you'll never look at sports again. It's the same again.
And Javier is a great facilitator, teacher. Deacon Javier, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That's quite the promise, y'all. So you will never look at sports the same way again. Get your life and bring a friend.
November 21st, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Get into it.
All right.
Bye, Javier. So this next comment from Marieli about ADOS. Actually, I think is Amilcar in the waiting room, or am I going to get played again? Amilcar or Papa Amilcar.
Hi,
Hey.
how are you?
Hey, ¿qué pasó? What's going on, folks? How are you guys doing?
¿Qué sopa? Again, everyone is surrounded by panas. And and the comment that actually is great.
Hold on. Before we get to that, introduce yourself.
Oh yeah.
How's everybody doing? Good evening. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody. Thank you guys, as always. I fully enjoyed it. And if you guys, I'm sure you guys have regular followers, but any new listeners or followers or viewers, please follow these women, because they're bringing the truth and they're bringing comedy and they're bringing insightfulness. My name is Amilcar Priestley. I am the director of the AfroLatin project and the co-director of the AfroLatino Festival here in New York. So many thanks for having me here.
And I mean, your legacy. I mean, we talk about Black Latin Americans, your family, your partner, Maelka, and doing all the things with Black people, Blackness through the region. And I know you're going to enjoy this comment, because we talk about it pretty often. Well, not often, because it's like, but Marieli said, do we have any thoughts on this, on how some of the ADOS
the who?
ADOS, African descendants of slaves.
Oh, ADOS,
their take on Latino votes for Trump's and the impact that will have on unification. I'm not sure of the context, but I know just out the gate, ADOS are xenophobic, and they're by and large their focus is on U.S. Black people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're an interesting one. I think in the abstract, I don't really object to their philosophy as far as, you know, the U.S. should pay reparations to the descendants of slaves who were enslaved here in the United States, like Spain should be paying reparations to us, and the Dutch should be paying reparations, and the Germans should be paying reparations. We all know that's not going to happen. The problem, for as far as I'm concerned, I think a lot of us is concerned, is that one, there I am not 100% sure if there isn't some astroturf component to this, but on top of that, you know, the idea of the xenophobic component of it is very problematic, because it kind of removes any opportunity or hope for solidarity beyond the United States. And I think this year, if anything, should demonstrate, or should have demonstrated, that the Black experience throughout the Western Hemisphere, and I would, you know, it's not a stretch to say globally, but absolutely within the Western Hemisphere, is a very similar one. Our experiences are similar, and the things that we deal with as far as systemic racism are very similar. So it's a missed opportunity, but you know, it's the thing is that a lot of this is cyclical, right? So not even ADOS is new. They may think they are, but this conversation was going on, you know, decades ago, where there was a similar split and reconciliation. So, you know, as a saying goes, ain't nothing new under the sun.
Right. And I don't know what they said about the Latino vote.
Oh yeah, I have no idea.
I blocked them on all social media platforms, so I don't really know what they said about it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, I don't really engage with the whole back and forth on social media. I mean, I give you folks all the props in the world. I don't have the patience for that.
No, I give Dash all the props in the world.
But Dash gets life from that boy. Dash be going in. I appreciate that. But yeah, I don't have the patience for that. But I'm not sure what they've said. I guess are they saying there's some opportunities for solidarity with the Latinos for Trump, or where were they going with this?
Well, I don't know. Marieli said that she follows some of the folks that are fighting for ADOS reparations, and today there have been so many comments about how it is a Latino or brown fault, etc. I honestly don't have time.
Their usual MO anyway, so like,
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they said to even comment on that particular component of it, but I know from a general perspective, like, yeah, sure, everybody should be getting reparations where that's going to happen. You know, there've been efforts in the Caribbean, you know, to really push this forward, but most of the European countries have resoundingly said hell no.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's kind of unfortunately where we stand as far as any efforts on our part for our communities in our respective countries. You know, but yeah, ADOS. I mean, I saw them pop up in the last 5 years. They've gotten some legitimacy by bringing in, you know, folks who have their own legitimacy, which has furthered their conversation. But you know, I don't really know much more about them than that, and I'm not gonna really delve too much more into that with them.
Yeah, and me personally, I feel like we wasted enough time on them.
I was gonna say we should.
I'm not really concerned. Block, delete.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm just kind of curious. I've been watching the you know, I tuned out yesterday. I slept through the results. I woke up and started to look at some of the things, and that's not usually me. I'm a political junkie. But I think a lot of us saw the writing on the wall. I mean, let's see what happens as it plays out with the ballots today. seems to be a bit more, I guess, positive outlook. But
and for me, that's questionable, right? Because
that's right.
the vote is not really for Biden. The vote is against Trump. So that's clear. And to me, that is, like, what kind of democracy is that people are I think people need to go vote, right? If that's your choice, go vote. I think this is a crazy, I don't even like using the word crazy because there's some, it's so stigmatized, right? But this person is a lunatic that has severe mental health issues that are not being addressed, and people with mental health should have their needs addressed and taken care of. So I think the vote is to get this person out right now. And I was looking through my computers are a hot mess, but we're getting that together because 4 years ago, right? 4 years ago, I had a completely different insight into the electoral process, right? Because I manage a Green Party vice presidential campaign, and I covered the elections in Venezuela. Like, I covered the U.S. elections physically in Venezuela. And the stuff that you see on CNN and Fox and all that kind of stuff is not the stuff that's being the information is way more transparent than what they show us, because I was able to see the behind the scenes of the actual votes being counted, right? And that is like, media gets access to that, the public doesn't. So media can manipulate how that is being done. So before, like, we were seeing things before CNN and Fox and all these people were reporting it because it was coming out, right? So that's number one. Number two, when I was in Venezuela a few days before the election, speaking to people, they were like, Hillary Clinton and Trump, both horrible for the region. Trump might actually be better for the region because the Democratic Party has been horrible in the region. So, and just the other day, I was on a talk, right, where a microphone was basically cut off because I was talking about the levels of homicide in Latin America against Black people and how that is directly financed by the U.S. government through training and through arms and through all this, like, foreign trade and policy, war and drugs, all that kind of stuff creates all these homicides over there. But then when I started talking about that, boom, my microphone was cut. Why? Because people don't want to hear about what actually happens abroad.
What kind of, that's crazy.
People don't want to hear that any of these governments.
It's easy for them to.
No, a lot of people don't even know. A lot of people don't know that there's something called U.S. foreign policy. Because they think it's like, upholding democracy, protecting lives, making sure that the rights of women are upheld. Yeah. No, that's not what that means.
Yeah.
Exploitation of land and natural resources for the United States to reign, because that doesn't even come down and trickle down to the communities here. Let's be clear. That's stuff that's sold and exported to other countries.
Yep.
Anyways, you all got me.
No, look, real talk. I mean, there's, I post my sole post today, or only two, was basically that the lack of any kind of geopolitical context or knowledge to what the hell we're dealing with is alarming. It's not surprising. I mean, and honestly, like, I mean, a lot of folks, when we talk about Afro-Latino this and Afro-Latino that, have zero geopolitical context for this conversation. None. And they want to wax poetic and run their mouth, and it does it this, and it's great that there's a lot of interest, but it does a disservice when you're talking in a vacuum without any kind of, and it's not just that they don't have the knowledge. Sometimes it just doesn't seem like there's even any interest, and that's even more troubling. Like, Yeah, when we get Brooklyn, I said gunshot.
We're like,
But it's crazy to me. The lack of I mean, folks is talking just, just without any real sense of, and I mean, yeah, sure, you can take the U.S. context and take some points from there, but it's you can't engage in a whole conversation and hold yourself out as representing a community or without that knowledge. I mean, I don't really know how people do it. But I guess,
they do it very easy.
They do it, yeah.
Nobody said you had. Everybody got access. Nobody said you had to be right or even know what the hell you was talking about, right? It's just like those are the challenges too, because now you have to have discernment on how to, like, what information you want to put aside. Yeah. And sometimes we don't know how to, folks, we don't know how to do that. I mean, also just the fact that in a lot of spaces, like, this is where activities or access to have life experiences like travel become so important. Because for a lot, like, I've spoken to quite a few people lately that have been like, the only time any of my family ever went somewhere was when, like, my uncle joined the military. Mm-hmm. Right. And so
that in of itself is
exactly. So you're there under the same supposed right work that you were just talking about, Amilcar, which is that, like, there's a protective, right? The U.S. is going to save, or they're going to, they're the smart people in the region. So I think that also impacts the way that the decision making trickles down from all of those experiences. Mm-hmm. And it goes right back to what you said, Dash, that, like, people are like, why would I risk what I got?
Yeah.
For who? For people I don't know?
The hilarious thing to me and concerning, right? Because I'm raising children here and I'm like, I need to run, maybe? I don't know. The concerning thing to me is when people are acting here like, oh my God, things are going to get horrible here. This man is crazy. This man is going to kill us all. He's staging a coup. This can't happen in the United States. And I'm like, wah, wah, wah. You, with your tax dollars, have created all these coups in Latin America. You have invaded countries.
It's disturbing, but it's funny. It's funny to watch. It's funny to watch the panic. It's like I said, it's disturbing, but it's like, y'all, and again, it's zero perspective. Like, y'all haven't been paying attention to the last 30 years plus. I mean, I'm just talking about contemporary.
That and disrespectful, right? Yeah. Because I have been told that I'm extreme. And I'm like, I lived through an invasion. What are you talking about? I'm extreme. Where are people from? If this man, which is the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, no party has the intellectual capacity to stage a coup in this country. Like, it takes a lot. Number one, they don't have the discipline. They don't have the willpower. They just don't have it. Right? Let's be clear.
Yeah.
If that were to happen and people are, quote unquote, organizing, have any of you all got on a call? Because there are people from Latin America living here that know strategy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No,
we know there are people here that immigrants from Latin America.
Been there, done that. Yeah.
Been there, done that, organized, fled, or stayed and then left for political reasons. I'm just floored. I'm just floored at the conversation sometimes, because it's such like, we're inventing the wheel, and we're inventing this and we're people have to do this, and funding, right? There's funding in between to organization, Anyway, to me it's just, and then when I speak like this, it's like, oh, what action are you taking? Because you have to organize instead of complain. Oh, you're just complaining. It's all right. You all don't want us there. You all do not want to listen to Black people from Latin America.
Yeah. No, I mean, we are I said it before and I'll say it again. We are, to be like them children. We like to be seen, and if that and not heard from all sides.
They want us to talk about like how we discovered that we were Black. We're not doing that.
Nah, I'm not doing. I stopped that 101 foolishness years ago. And look, I'm not. It's not. Let me rephrase that. It's not foolishness. It's an evergreen conversation. There will always be a new generation that has that question, and it's an important question. That doesn't mean that I need to spend my time, or you all need to spend your time talking about it. Let the young folks, let the newer generation engage that conversation. Because we're gonna stick with that conversation for how long and not be able to progress to other matters? No, I'm not doing that. I know y'all not.
No,
never that.
Nah.
I wanna Evelyn, you had something to say, and then I wanted to highlight some of these juicy comments.
I know the comments are so very juicy. You know what? I forgot what I got to say, but go to the comments. Take it to the videotape.
Yeah, take it to the video, and we have around 7 minutes left.
Yeah.
Cut to camera 4. U.S. supported coup in Bolivia was almost exactly a year ago. U.S. funding to Venezuela was a few weeks ago. It's ongoing, right?
Yeah.
Then they build them up and they send the CIA to take them out, just like Noriega. Noriega in Panama were BFFs with the U.S. All of a sudden, he's a dictator now, right?
The soft coup, the soft coup approach is what they've been using. I mean, even since Obama, they go in, they bring up all these electoral challenges, and next thing you know, the guy is gone. I mean, they did it in Paraguay, they did it in Honduras in 2009, and and it continues. They have found alternate means than straight military intervention.
Right. U.S. is great at funding the wrong people in Latin America for U.S. interests and then destabilizing the region. They do it over in the Middle East now. They've always been doing it worldwide. And the thing is, they don't fund the wrong people.
Right.
They fund the right people for them.
Fund who they want to fund. Yeah.
Well, wrong people for us, right? And in this week that we're celebrating Fiesta Patrias, the idea that Panama became a republic based on Wall Street interests and also the white Panamanian elite. So none of these things can happen without the full participation of the white moneyed Latin Americans in the region. None of it could happen. And so you had all these interest convergence of the white Latin Americans with the white North Americans. And here we have the ongoing fuckery that continues to happen.
Wasn't it Lincoln who was like, send them all to Panama?
Lincolnia. And then the racist people in Chiriquí and Costa Rica were like, don't bring them blacks over here. They wrote letters. They were like, hell no.
Right.
No, we got our own. We got enough black people here. Don't bring your blacks here. And then they called off the project.
Right. Yeah. No, it's the U.S. has had its from big stick diplomacy under Teddy Roosevelt, the backyard diplomacy. I mean, this has been the U.S. foreign policy since what, the Monroe Doctrine?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, really, like this was. I mean, you got the Obama doctrine, you got the Roosevelt doctrine, you got that was a doctrine of U.S. foreign policy, and it continues to this day.
And we teach in our course that Simón Bolívar, the liberator, right? I'm like, Simón didn't liberate nothing except his will to oppress without Spain getting involved, because he went begging on his hands and knees to Haiti to help with his liberation projects, right? And Haiti was like, why would we help you, white man? You own people, you own Africans, right? And he said whatever he needed to say to get all the capital, get all the funding, get all the people, get all the intellectual property, and then turned around and invited the U.S. to a conference in Latin America and didn't invite Haiti. And so
he was losing that. He was losing that war at that point. Yeah. Pétion, he promised Pétion to free the slaves, and like you said, he said what had to be said. But and it's funny because I was having a conversation with somebody, and they were like, I don't understand. I forgot what it was, and I said to them, look, most of the Western Hemisphere, especially down in South America, has their independence to thank for black people to thank for their independence, not just Haiti's contribution, but the actual people who fought these wars. They put us on the front lines. You know, part of it was, okay, yeah, sure, you could get free if you fight for us, but irrespective of the rationale, they put us on the front lines to fight these wars for them, half of it decimating our populations. And then when they won, they say, yeah, get it, yeah, got to go.
Yeah. Javier always says Latin America likes to keep its black population tucked away until it's time to win some shit. And
this is why I have to put in the 100 emojis in the chat so that we can see that if you are here for what was just said, drop some 100 in the chat. Go ahead.
And so that includes sports, that includes wars, that we always on the front lines. And again, we're on the front lines, right? Talking about voting, talking about white Latin Americans and their interest convergence with white North Americans. And then also you have, I wanted to add this because we're about to head out like SpongeBob, but people who may have left their countries and they had terrible experiences, terrible lived experiences under that regime. And then they're coming to the US and this regime is against the regime that they don't like. So now they're going to be loyal to these people, like we see with Cubans who well, I mean, the gusanos already, they're original.
Yeah, that's like, yeah.
You don't have to waste time on them.
That's
people are wasting
indoctrinated.
time on that. But then you have people who may be black, who may be not gusanos, right? That they hated their life in Cuba, right? And I understand that it's extremely hard. And they have the chance to leave, so they're gonna go with people who are against what they just left.
Yeah. It's definitely not. In certain instances, it is cut and dry, and you can be like, yeah, we already know what the politics of certain groups are because they've shown it. Others, it's definitely more nuanced, and that's what I talk about when we talk about the geopolitical context. Yeah, I mean, a lot of Black Cubans came over because the revolution didn't do what it said it was going to do, and so the discrimination and racism, even in revolutionary Cuba, has been as problematic as there've been progress in certain instances, but like you still have the same issues of racial profiling, of police abuse, of the systemic nature of it. And when they come here, they're pissed off. But the thing that I don't get is how when they come, they don't see that same thing happening here. Now, sure, if you're coming here, as a lot of us do, and we live in our own enclaves of community, all you see is what your community around you tells you. And so if you've come here and you're surrounded by way of example only Cubans who in Miami who think of in a certain way or of a certain generation, that's all you're going to hear. And so sure, it's not that much of a stretch to say that you've been brought in and inculcated with that way of thinking. But for others, I don't know. I mean, we see the class reasons why and the racial reasons why a lot of these folks want to maintain their power and want to come here. And the Venezuelans, I come to mind as the most recent iteration of it, but others, sure, I can't call it. Maybe it's the national
but the idea that you're like, I'm not Black like them, right? You have that phenomena that happens with the anti-Blackness of African Americans, like, oh, that's happening to them. But I mean, we see this with these clown rappers who are like, oh, Black Lives Matter has nothing to do with me, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, this is juicy, y'all. So good. We're gonna start to wrap up. It's 10 o'clock and we all need some rest. Babies. Shout out to Gibran. Yes.
Salud.
Hi, Gibran.
Gibran, what do you think about the elections? What's going on? The Gibran has been covered. They've been talking about it in class.
And you're always so opinionated.
I want to hear your opinion first.
No, pues ya yo lo dije. Queremos oír el tuyo.
Please feel free. Come on.
Okay. Bueno, puedes hablar porque ninguna de las dos cosas es lo mejor. Pero no tienes.
Digo, yo no sé por qué.
Okay. All right.
So maybe next time.
Dying.
You know what? We caught you off guard, Gibran. We caught you off
I
guard.
know we caught him off guard.
Don't worry.
You didn't even put me in a green room.
Right. You didn't let me know. Like we did you dirty, Gibran. We sorry. That wasn't entirely right either. So on that,
I like that agency though. He was like, nah, like
yeah, right.
I ain't gonna produce under your terms.
Oh, my two kids are very clear about that. They're
So-
like, no, not right now.
Shout out to establishing boundaries and sticking to them. And on that note, thank you so much for showing up. Many thanks to our guests, Javier Wallace and Amilcar Priestley. Follow you where, Amilcar, if people want to hear more about your great thoughts.
AfroLatino Project at arroba ampersand at AfroLatino Project, no T, and then at Festival AfroLat on Twitter, and IG is at AfroLatino Festival NYC.
Or if you follow any of us, you'll get to all those projects because we homies. And please check out our upcoming workshops. The Rayo Cañonera workshops.
Check them out. Sign up if you haven't.
Right now. We got workshop number 2 on Saturday. Then we have on November 21st Javier's workshop about Black sports. I think Amelia, you're gonna sit in on that because that's
That's a long time coming. I'm gonna sit in on that one for sure. I'm excited to get
when we dropped it. He's like, finally.
Yeah. Yo, I mean, I'm excited to hear him talk. I've been waiting for this one, so I'm excited. Yeah, absolutely. So y'all definitely come check that one out.
And that's November 21st. And then we have our Otoño Negro, December 3rd, 5th, 6th. And then we have all the great programming from Afro Resistance. We have Black Immigration, an Invisible Issue. And that's upcoming. That's in the next couple days. Let me open my calendar. And then after that, Housing as a Human Right.
And hold on, that's on Friday, November the 13th. We had a change of dates. So Friday the 13th, please send us your questions because we're going to have people from the United Nations actually answering how civil society can get involved in upholding human rights, both here domestically and in the region.
And so, follow us. You'll get all the event info. And thank y'all for coming with your comments and questions. Y'all were great tonight.
So good. Shout out to y'all. Thank you so much for listening and watching and sharing your thoughts with us. Whoop, whoop.
Oh, and send us questions.
Yeah, send us questions. So we have a Dear Genevieve feature on, and Genevieve gets to really give you some amazing, wise, sage advice. So write us at radiocañanegra@gmail.com, and we'll also put it on all of the systems so that you can write in and get some good ass free advice from Genevieve.
No, but wait a minute. It's not only for me. Now, I want to hear some like juicy stuff too. It doesn't have to be political. So you can also write Dear Genevieve about like anything romantic that you might be facing, things, like things that you might be questioning.
We might have to actually have you bring like some cocktail or some libation of
parenting.
Yeah.
And then we have our in-house specialist on restorative justice. So if you're having any kind of issues at work or within your family that you might want some resolution or you're conflicted about, Evelyn. And if you want advice on several things, including travel and dragging, if you have somebody that you need to drag, we can help you drag them. Like we can help with that.
That's
we
hilarious.
Don't want to, but if you write us, we'll be able to give you concrete advice and steps to take.
Yeah.
For an effective drag.
Because I will say that sometimes an effective drag is quite restorative. So it is like
too funny.
So, on that note, happy Wednesday. Have such a good night. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been so much fun.
It was fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Amilcar, for joining me.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Gibran.
Much appreciated. Cuídense, gente.
All right. Bye, familia.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.